Welcome to New England New England Learns free webinar series. I keep saying New England ISTE, that's what we used to be. We're a partner with New Hampshire, supporting technology using educators, which is a partner of the International Society of Technology and Education and ASCD. This is a year of name changes for many organizations, including Full Scale, which used to be the Learning Accelerator. We changed our name as requested by ISTE ASCD, and now we are working for the same mission to bring you quality professional development. If you're on social media, we're using the handles and hashtags New England Learns and New England Learns webinars and Forward to School, and that's important for you to know. My name is Gabby Richard Harrington. I'm the president of New England Learns, and I'll be your host this afternoon. Everyone present at the live session will get a certificate of attendance without doing any more than being here. All who've registered will be sent the links. If you're listening to the recording, you can complete a quick exit ticket, which will trigger an email that includes an attendance certificate and all the links that we can give you for today to the video, audio, if that's acceptable for this particular webinar. And you're welcome to share those links as widely as possible. We would like this information to get out to the largest audience we can reach. Today is February 24th, 2026. I'm here in New England. We survived yet another blizzard. It's a beautiful sunny day. Some of us have up to 3 feet of snow. And I'm pleased to be sharing Improving Professional Learning Systems for Today's Educators, Playbook for State and Local Leaders with Soo Song. Soo is the Director of Projects and Initiatives at CETA, and they are partnering with Full Scale for this project. He oversees portfolio initiatives to support 40 state education agencies identify and pursue research-aligned policies on topics such as digital opportunity, edtech procurement, professional learning, sustainability, and AI. He leads CETA's partnership with philanthropic groups and corporate sponsors and advises the organization's federal advocacy strategies. Soo also oversees the design and evaluation of CETA's signature events and represents state leaders in national and international forums, including as designated focal point for the UNESCO-UNICEF Gateways to Public Digital Learning Initiative. Boy, that sounds like a lot. Welcome, Soo. I'm going to let you take over sharing, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Gabby, for the invitation. And I'll start sharing my screen here in just a second. Here we go. Zoom is cooperating with me in one way. I apologize that I'm off camera. I got a new laptop over the weekend for work, and it is still, yet to configure how to work together with Zoom. So you'll get a blank screen from me today, but I am here live and well. Don't have much snow here up in the Pacific Northwest. I'm glad I avoided that. But as Gabby was mentioning, my name is Soo Song. I'm the Director of Projects and Initiatives at CETA. And for those of you that don't know CETA, we're a professional association that represents state ed tech and digital learning leaders from 40-ish member states, as well as affiliate and corporate member organizations that share our mission and vision. We regularly convene our members to help them exchange best practices on ed tech policy development and implementation, and we also conduct research and advocacy on behalf of our members as well. Folks know us from helping the U.S. Department of Education develop the 2024 National Ed Tech Plan. But today, I'm excited to share with you a new research-based professional learning guide for state and local leaders that we developed in collaboration with our partners from Full Scale, from Learning Forward, and ISTE plus ASCD. My agenda for today includes the following. I'll give you some of the project context, then we'll dive into some of the research and the key findings from last year. I'll share the recommendations that are explored in our guide that's grounded in those findings. And then there's good work happening around the country, so I'll be sure to share out some examples. And we'll since we're recording this, we won't have time for discussion. But if folks would like to sort of send us feedback, I'll leave my contact information in the chat. I'll skip the warm up for now and keep going. If you've read the 2024 National Ed Tech Plan from the U.S. Department of Education, you might know that we placed a lot of emphasis on this thing called the digital design divide. And for those who of you that aren't familiar with the terminology, this is the gap that exists between educators who have the support they need to integrate technology effectively into instruction and those who do not. And as I mentioned, CETA was the lead contractor for the Department of Ed in developing the 2024 National Ed Tech Plan. So naturally, CETA has been working to continue to raise awareness around the digital design divide. And in our work to do that, we found a few interesting things. So we conducted an annual state EdTech trend survey to figure out where the largest pain points for our state education agency members are. This isn't the latest data, it's our survey data from 2024. But when we compared the 2024 results to the 2023 results, we saw that professional learning was the issue that saw the greatest increase in the number of states pointing to it as the top unmet EdTech need. And some of you policy wonks might be familiar with the Title II-A program under the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's the largest bucket of federal funding that can be used towards professional learning, among a lot of other things. But when we dug into the data about how that funding is being used, we saw some interesting things. We saw that technology-enabled instruction takes sort of a backseat in how states and districts deploy those dollars. According to the latest data that's available from a few years ago, only 9 states said that they budgeted Title II-A towards integrating technology into curriculum and instruction. Only about a third of districts said the same thing. So, as states and districts try to support educators in deploying AI-powered tools in impactful and responsible ways, there's a gap in the systems that determine those kinds of supports. And that's why we engaged in a partnership with ISTE plus ASCD, Fullscale, and Learning Forward to dig into this issue and produce a guide to more effectively leveraging Title II-A and other available professional learning dollars. And here's just a screenshot of the article that Government Technology published when we made the announcement for our project in the winter of 2024.
Jisoo, a question.
Yes,
There was a huge ramp up, obviously, for COVID, for online and for support for teachers and teaching in different
sure.
modes than they had been before, right? And what we
Yep.
saw then was that it was not the technology so much that held them back, but the difference
Mm-hmm.
in the pedagogy online.
Mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding is there's a huge pushback to doing less and less of that, just as
Yep.
we talked about fewer people coming to webinars. What do you see in the data? No, it looks like it's gone down, but do you think that that's a result of trying more face-to-face, hands-on, less technology as a result of all the work we did during COVID?
I mean, it certainly could be, right? The national trend nowadays shows that folks are a little bit hesitant about all the technology investments that we made during the pandemic. A lot of states and districts are thinking about how we might even go back into the analog days. But we know from research that technology, if used effectively and responsibly, can accelerate student learning in some ways. So we're trying to, create some recommendations on how we build those systems that create those responsible uses of ed tech. So yeah, certainly it could be a reflection of some of those national trends, but we'll see where that goes in the following years.
Great, thanks.
Of course. All right. So moving forward, our the goals of our project were fourfold, right? We were trying to identify how those federal Title II-A funds are being spent when it comes to EdTech professional learning. We wanted to spotlight those promising strategies for investing Title II-A and other professional learning funds to close that digital design divide, provide exemplar stories of successful use cases, and suggest a stakeholder roadmap for implementing Title II-A as well as other professional learning dollars. Um, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the project steering committee, which included the 4 lead organizations, again, CETA, Fullscale, ISTE plus AACD, and Learning Forward. But we also want to make sure that we had the voices of our members from the state level represented as well. So we were able to invite Tate and Colleen, who represent federal funding offices within the Washington and Nebraska Departments of Education to make sure that our research methodologies and the recommendations were sound. Oh, something that I forgot to mention. As you listen to the webinar, you might see there's a CETA.info link at the bottom left of your screen. That is the link to the guide that I'm talking about over the course of the webinar. So if you want to follow along, you can just plug in CETA.info/title2guide. All right, so moving forward, here's what we set out to do in our research phase. We wanted to understand if and how state and local leaders define high quality instruction that integrates technology. We want to understand how they use public dollars to help educators use technology to improve their practices. We want to know if and how leaders are measuring the impact of their investments. And finally, identify some examples of state and local structures and policies that lead to thoughtful investments in professional learning. So here's a quick overview of the methodology that we used. We conducted a national survey last spring with a nationally representative sample of SEAs and LEAs. We also hosted 3 focus groups by leaning into our partner organization's reach. And as we developed the draft findings and recommendations, we were able to validate them with external partners and also by going back to the leaders who participated in our focus groups. And you can look at the full survey and focus group protocol if you're curious about the methodology in the guide's appendices. Here's a quick overview of what we found when we looked at the survey data and the focus group data. First, we found that definitions of quality are inconsistent and incomplete. We found that few districts had a formal definition of what tech-enabled instruction looks like in practice, and even fewer had a clear vision of how professional learning can support effective ed tech integration. We found that funding often defaults to short-term tool training. As a system, we tend to focus on short-term training on specific platforms or applications that we might have procured. And these sessions, don't get me wrong, they have, some uses, right? They may meet some immediate needs like the rollout of a newly purchased tool, but it raises some questions around building durable educator capacity. Third, we found that tracking happens, impact is measured, but not always in the ways that drive improvement, right? Districts embed a lot of different metrics into their review cycles, but not always do understand impact and refine practices. States also have acknowledged that monitoring often focuses on compliance with relevant laws and regulations than on using evidence to refine strategies. So kind of easy to count things such as like where the dollars used in line with how Title IIA is allowed to be used or how many educators participated in this particular professional learning session, rather than, okay, how did educator behavior change as a result of that? It's a little harder to count, but more information on how educator behavior is changed as a result of professional learning can be helpful. And then lastly, the field lacks a strong library of well-documented models. Many districts are doing some really great things when it comes to professional learning, building educator capacity on ed tech and AI and all of that. But states don't always have the structures in place for sharing them across district lines. And based on that, we created 6 categories of system level actions for states. In the guide itself, you can dive into the specific actions that we recommend within each of these buckets, but just wanted to, for the sake of time, go over these 6 categories. First, without a clear, statewide definition of high quality technology integrated instruction, professional learning efforts can often become fragmented, right? So SEA leaders can work with their communities to set that vision and establish expectations by developing a definition of what tech integrated AI enabled instruction looks like. And then number 2, aligning funding decisions, with that definition, right? Funding decisions are most powerful when they're explicitly tied to instructional goals. So SEA level leaders can ensure that professional learning funding decisions are aligned with that shared definition of high quality tech integrated instruction.
Jisoo,
Third,
do
yes.
you have a good model that you do share that is a good definition of tech aligned instruction, tech
Yep. While we
integrated
don't
instruction?
endorse a particular definition, I think a lot of different organizations have come up with frameworks that might be really good to use. 2 jobs ago, I was the senior policy lead at ISTE. So the ISTE standards, I'm kind of biased in using the ISTE standards as a beginning framework, right? But there's also other frameworks like the Universal Design for Learning framework that, ensures that all learners are benefit from tech integrated instruction, right? So there's examples of that embedded throughout the guide that we don't particularly endorse necessarily, but there are definitely examples that we've seen state and districts leverage.
Thank you.
All right. So number 3, leveraging compliance structures to encourage and support continuous improvement. Compliance monitoring, don't get me wrong, again, it's essential for program integrity and public trust. But when it's limited to checking the boxes, it misses the chance to strengthen practice, right? So state education agencies can really help districts use the required data collection to make more strategic professional learning investments. And I'll give you an example of that in just a second. But number 4, encouraging durable professional learning models. We know from the research that one-off workshops rarely lead to sustained changes in behavior and practice. So state education agencies can incentivize districts to invest in more durable models like coaching and job-embedded inquiry or improvement cycles. Fifth, documenting, highlighting, and scaling what works. Again, as I mentioned, we found that pockets of excellence exist across states, but we need a deliberate system to document and share them so that they don't remain isolated. And then lastly, working across silos within state leadership. Our research found that too often state level departments often operate in isolation with different teams making decisions about curriculum, assessment, technology, and professional learning. So by bringing ed tech and instructional leadership teams together with the professional learning team, SEAs can ensure that technology integration is embedded in all major instructional activities. And I promise to give you some examples of how that's working in some states. We highlighted the Wyoming Innovation Network as an example of creating a culture of continuous improvement. So LEAs that are participating in this network are not only documenting their professional learning activities itself, but also share evidence of impact that can be reviewed to inform future statewide support, such as teacher implementation videos, student work samples, and peer feedback. So Wyoming isn't just stopping at how many teachers received this particular training. They're trying to measure behavioral change by, creating a platform where these artifacts of behavior change can be collected. EdWeek released some data recently that says more educators are receiving training, especially when it comes to AI, but only about 5% of that encompasses ongoing professional learning. So that's why I wanted to highlight the efforts of my former home state, Virginia. Virginia has a good structure that can be leveraged to remedy this gap. They've codified the position of what they call ITRTs, or instructional technology resource teachers, into their statewide standards of quality to ensure that EdTech professional learning isn't a one and done experience. There is a human helping educators by providing ongoing coaching support. So that states I wanted to make sure that I hit on district level recommendations as well. Again, you can read into the discrete action steps that we recommend in the guide itself. But we here, for the sake of time, I'm just going to go over those 5 categories of recommended actions for districts that are explored in the guide. They largely mirror the state level recommendations, from building cross-functional leadership teams, right? Raising the profile of that ed tech coach or instructional technology leader in making professional development decisions, anchoring professional learning in evidence-based frameworks, like I mentioned, like UDL or ESD standards, rather than relying solely on that tool-based training, investing in sustainable models like job-embedded coaching and multi-year initiatives, using data to inform learning cycles, not just out of compliance needs, and diversifying funding strategies, unfortunately, not over-relying on Title IIA, given how shaky the federal funding landscape is right now. Wanted to make sure that I illustrate these recommendations with a few examples that we pulled in the guide itself. We highlighted districts like Claremont Unified School District out in California, where the EdTech department is truly a cross-functional team, like we recommended. They ensure that professional learning on EdTech is part of a coherent district-wide strategy and not just a series of one-off trainings. And we also encourage partnerships with education service agencies and other intermediary units, because districts themselves might not have the capacity to take on this work by themselves. So we highlight folks like Pennsylvania's intermediary unit 13, where professional learning is tied to the state's student-centered learning blueprint, rather than using specific tools or software. I'm going to skip this activity for the sake of the webinar, but yeah. We encourage you to take a look at the full guide and think about how these recommendations and examples can apply in your own context. We'd certainly recognize that some recommendations may be resource heavy than others. So think about where the ideal starting point may be for your agencies. I'm going to put this in the chat, and I think the recording should capture it. If you don't have time to read the entire guide, our partners over at Getting Smart helped us author a good summary of like the major points that we made in the guide. So I'll put this in the chat in case folks want to grab that link. But at a minimum, we'd love to work with you to share the guide far and wide. So we created a very easy dissemination toolkit that can be leveraged in different ways. So if you want to communicate these within your districts or within your states, feel free to use the resources here in the dissemination guide that I just put in the chat. All right. So we hope that this presentation gave you some actionable insights into our new professional learning strategy guide. And I'll put CETA's general information email account in the chat here in case you have any questions that you'd like to follow up on. There is a human behind that email link, so your responses will get read and responded to. So please feel free to email us if you have any questions, or if you'd like a targeted briefing for your own stakeholders as well. So Gabby, thank you again for the invitation to share this new resource that we developed in partnership with Full Scale with SDACD and Learning Forward. And yeah, glad that you had a chance to talk about this with you all today.
Well, thank you very much. This was very informative. I will send out all of these links along with the video recording. Jisoo, thank you very much. I do want to say that our next webinar is also with Full Scale Learning, and we are looking at March 5th for the date for the next one. Check out our website for full details. And thanks very much and have a great day.